Well, hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bougie Best Friend Podcast. I'm your host Koko, and you know that social media is, a huge part of my life and all of our lives, and we have been immersed in this digital world. And as a content creator, at some point, I decided that I wanted to take my socials seriously, and one of the things that I wanted to really work on is creating an aesthetic feed. And I was like, what platform should I use? Because the way to do that, you have to plan out your feed, you have to plan out your colors and all of that, and it's hard to do it on your own, on Canva or whatever. There's a platform called Planoly, which I am a huge fan of. I think that was the first platform I ever tried many years ago. That was actually the first platform ever to kind of create this social planning. And then I tried a bunch of other ones, but I kept on going back to Planoly because I felt like their systems are just the best. So I was like, I need to talk to the people who are a part of the team. So we have Planoly's CEO, Katelyn, on the episode today. And she walked us through her career journey, how she started as a CEO of Planoly. We talked a little bit about our favorite books and movies, and the way to decompress after a long day at work, because we all need to decompress sometimes. This conversation was so much fun, and if you loved it as well, please leave a 5-star rating and a review because it helps the show grow and it means the world. Okay, let's dive right in.
Katelyn, welcome to Bougie Best Friend Podcast.
Hello, I'm excited to be here.
We already established our joint love for dogs and our joint love for Planoly, where you are the CEO, and I am such a huge fan of the platform. I feel like it really helped me just with my content creation journey to just stay organized, and just it's such a useful platform for creators. But I would love to hear more about your background and how did you end up in Planoly?
Yeah, my background is in sales and marketing. I started in lead generation, so I did about four years of cold calling, which is very fun.
Love that.
Character building for sure. And I've always been interested in tech and kind of how marketing and tech intersect. I've now been in the social media industry for about 6 years, 4 years of those as CEO of different companies. Over my kind of career, I've experienced both big and small companies, and ultimately, I've found that I really just love building, and that's what brought me to Planoly. There's so much opportunity for growth, and we are really poised to really support this burgeoning creator economy in a way that I find really exciting. And my personal mission is to prove that leaders don't have to look and act or be a certain way. And so the creator economy, I think, it's really about creators showing that you don't have to be being successful doesn't have to look or be or act a certain way. And so I think there's a lot of similar threads in the way that creators operate and the way that I want to build my career. And so supporting people and building their businesses and breaking the mold is something that I just get really excited about.
I love that. And I feel like that's such an important thing nowadays. We all, as you said, we're all used to that typical CEO, like this is how you look, this is how you dress, this is how you run your business, this is how you operate. I feel like almost as women started to get more into the positions of power, that started changing. So if you can tell me a little bit about do you have any special strategies or plans, or how do you try to diversify the CEO vision?
When I was kind of coming up early in my career, I think command and control was really the center of leadership. It was make people do your bidding. I really like to be more collaborative. I think one of the central tenets and one of the things that I talk about with my team a lot is I want feedback. When I was early in my career and my CEO was trying to command and control me, I was like, I have really good ideas. And so I really think just creating a place, especially when we have so many creators and people with side hustles and that understand what we're trying to build on our team, creating a space where we can have that open dialogue, I think is really important. The other thing, I know all new managers kind of make that mistake of becoming best friends with your team. I definitely had my own journey in that, but I do think that there's an opportunity to really have fun. It doesn't have to be all a grind, and we've done this kind of refounding of Planoly recently since we're a couple years out of the founders exiting. How do we really bring this back to what we're really trying to do with Planoly? And we talk a lot about creating a startup and really operating like we are a startup and giving people ownership and doing all those things, but how to kind of shift that from startups are always grind. And like, sure, I've had my days where I've been up till
We all have to grind sometimes. Yeah.
But it's about how do we take startup and make it more about opportunity and engagement and insight and ideation rather than about like, you can't have a family because I'm almost 2-year-old and I want.
Okay. Is that your only child? Or I mean, besides your dog, obviously, is there a 2-year-old?
He was the first. Yeah, my wife and I had our daughter Camden about almost 2 years ago now.
And okay, I have so many questions for you. I'm gonna put notes, motherhood, running a business, and all that. But first, you said something really interesting, and that is becoming best friends with your team. Like, is that something that you guys? Because I see for myself, I worked with a lot of people, and like sometimes I have more of that like personal relationship, like we're friends and we're kind of like doing this together. And then sometimes I was working with people that it's more like, okay, it's the separation is very visible. Like, okay, so you're in this position, I'm in this position. What do you feel like works the best?
I think for me, the biggest thing is like, you can be friends and friendly and like you can enjoy things and you can talk about things that are not work and you can really like engage on a personal level. I really want to be able to bring my whole self to work. I don't want to have to like think about, oh, how am I supposed to act around this person? That just like adds a whole other mental load that I don't think we really need. But I think that where that breaks down and where like a lot of times like early managers make mistakes around becoming too close is that if you can't hold that line, if you can't push people, if you can't work together to make each other better, then like that, then everything kind of falls apart. So as long as you can give feedback, there's a lot of openness and there's clear expectations, I think you can have a lot of fun. And there are some boundaries that I have, and like I don't have my team follow me on social media just like because my personal account have a business account as well. But I think there's a lot of like ways you can still be your full self and engage.
I feel like I don't know if are you still categorizing Planoly as a startup? I mean, you mentioned startup a few times, but for me, like Planoly is like so huge. So I'm like, I can't even see it as a startup. But I feel like in that startup mentality, it's like everybody's doing it together. And sometimes those boundaries get crossed. It's like calling each other on the weekends and like somebody's hanging out with their family. And like sometimes it's kind of difficult to manage that.
Yeah, I mean, I think why we say like operating like a startup is we've been around for a long time. We are big. So we can't necessarily claim that we are totally a startup. And though, like we're building something new. We acquired the feed product. We're trying to expand into the creator workflow more. And so we really are thinking about what we're building as like a new thing, obviously on the foundation and with the ethos of Planoly in mind. So there, in some ways, I think I do consider us as a startup because we are building that new thing, which comes with a whole host of challenges that more established companies don't necessarily always have. And you can only, that's why we say operate like.
Let's actually define what is Planoly for those who might not know, they're listening right now. How would you describe Planoly?
Well, Planoly was the very first Instagram visual planner on the market. People may argue, but it's true. Planoly was the first one out there, and it was really focused on how do you build your brand on social media? How do you make your grid aesthetically pleasing and show yourself to the world in the best way possible? We've evolved quite a bit since then, and now we're kind of still toying around with like, how do we really truly incorporate monetization and building your creator store into kind of our foundation. But we're really about supporting creators and building a business around their passion and around what they want to do in the world. I think, and it doesn't have to be like your passion, like I'll claw and do whatever it takes to bring this thing to life, but bringing an idea into reality and kind of how do you both share that with the world, and that's where like the social component comes in, and then also how do you monetize it and make it your main thing if that's what you're wanting to do.
I was just thinking, social media is constantly changing. Like every week you have a new feature, every week something's like, there's always something we need to pay attention to. So how do you, in Planoly, you're obviously supporting the main platforms. So like you almost kind of have to change with the changes on the platform, but sometimes those changes take a little bit of time to implement.
Yeah, I think being a technology platform that relies on third parties, especially third parties like social media platforms that are constantly iterating, is definitely challenging. I think the hardest part about that is when something happens or a change occurs or there's an error with like an issue with the APIs that we connect to and it impacts our users' livelihood and we can't do anything to fix that. That's definitely the hardest part. And it requires a lot of agility, which kind of goes back to that like startup mentality that we were talking about. And it requires a lot of like, we have plans and we know that when they they collide with reality, they may have to change. So I do also think like that's one of the things that I know creators deal with constantly is when there are changes to the algorithm, when there are changes to the way that platforms moderate content, like it can have a really, really huge impact on their livelihood. And so one of the things I think that we bring is that we are deeply connected and we have relationships with our partners and the third party.
Almost like a little insight.
Yeah.
What's really happening.
So we can sometimes, usually, hopefully, get ahead of some of those changes. And we're also working on like with this acquisition of Snipfeed and like building out our creator store. We're trying to give creators a little bit more control of their audience. So we have a CRM, like that's a place where you can make sure that you have a way to connect with your audience that's not just on social. And it gives you a little bit more of that control given how volatile things can be.
So we mentioned that there's a lot of changes and that's definitely a challenge when you're like growing a digital product. Is there any other challenges that you can think of, or like if you can give us some tips on like how to handle challenges when running a business?
Well, running a business is hard and growing a business is hard. I think if it was easy or there was a 1, 2, 3 step process, everyone would do it and we would all be fine. I think for me, the biggest thing is iterating. It's starting with an idea, learning, and really listening to your user base, whether it's your media community or your customers or your subscribers. Like for us, it's having that open dialogue, not just with your team, but also more externally, so you can learn what works, what doesn't. There's that famous quote where if Ford had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So you have to kind of take what everyone asks for with a grain of salt and really understand, like, given all the information that I have, what will have the biggest impact? And it might not be something that's obvious to people. And so I think that's really important. And I also think not giving up is really important. It's really hard. And it's about waking up every day and like being excited about what you're doing and knowing that you're gonna fail, things are gonna go wrong. There's gonna be your intern is gonna send out an email to all of your subscribers.
Did that happen ever? Like, do you have any crazy, like, silly little mistake stories? I always like to hear, like, you know, when people are listening to CEOs and founders, it's like sometimes it's almost like, okay, cool, it happens to everybody. It doesn't just happen to, you know, to the little guys.
I've definitely done something like that. I'm sure it's probably that I've done it so many times that I don't even have that story. I do remember early in my career, there was like a really important meeting. It was an in-person meeting, and I was in charge of printing all of the content out and stapling it in the right order. And I have a very vivid memory of doing that incorrectly. I'd like to blame the stapler, but you never know.
Gotta blame someone. The stapler. I would love to talk a little bit about building a team and keeping everybody motivated. And like, I just have so many questions about building a team and hiring the right person, because I see even just finding people to help me with my socials and like editing and all that. It's so hard to find somebody who understands your vision, but at the same time, you're like, everybody's a creator. How does everybody not get it? how do you approach hiring and then kind of developing the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever I attend an interview, we're interviewing for someone right now, and the way I always start those conversations is that I want it to be a conversation. I think when you're just in that typical interview, like question, answer kind of style, it's hard to get to know what motivates people, and it's hard to really understand how someone's going to be in the day-to-day. I also really think the questions that they ask, like, it's not me trying to determine necessarily like only who is the perfect fit. It should be a mutual exploration, and we should be trying to figure out, like, are we aligned? What are our definitions of these terms that like are on the job description? And you should be testing me too. One of the things that one of my passions is storytelling. I love to like think about how to get people engaged, how to like emphasize the right things, and how to kind of bring people along. I also think there's a lot of value that can come from just talking about why. So starting with, hey, here's what we're going to do, and this is why, really resonates with people, and I think brings a lot more motivation and excitement into the day-to-day. Things are not always perfect in Planoly. And like when results are bad, if people are only tied to that extrinsic motivation of good results, it can be really hard to motivate people. So you really need to get people that are motivated and intrinsically excited about what we're building. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does. You say so many good things that I have like follow-up questions for everything. You mentioned asking questions, and I think that's such an underrated skill when it comes to like a job interview or anything else, because it's like you have to show interest in the company. Like you have to show that you maybe did your research, or like you know something. Maybe you can show up to an interview already pointing out a few things that you might do differently. So if you can share a few questions that you suggest to anybody, it doesn't have to be like Planoly specific, but like in a job interview, what would you say, like what kind of questions you should ask to kind of show interest?
I'm going to start with the worst question I was ever asked.
Yes, please.
Just because I think it's a funny anecdote.
Best and worst. Give me best and worst.
It was a number of years ago, and somebody, I asked them, like, what questions do you have for me? That's kind of how I was wrapping things up. And they actually looked around the room and pointed to the wall and said, why did you paint the wall that color?
Wow. Maybe they wanted to be an interior designer and they just like missed the.
In their defense, it was orange.
Okay.
So I get that.
What was the answer to the question? Why did you paint it orange?
Oh, well, this was early. I was
You're like, I don't know. It was just orange.
I had no say over the wall.
Oh my God.
I think I would just.
I wonder why that. I mean, it's such a. Imagine like you just remember that question and that person. God knows where they are nowadays.
I think it comes back to what you were saying of like, it's really important to come in and like have an idea of what you want to know. And I think that also comes from knowing what you want in your career and like what will be aligned with and not aligned with where you want to take your next step. I was trying to actually find the question that someone asked me recently because it was really good, but it really just came down to she'd done her research, she'd gone on to Planoly social, she wanted to understand kind of, I think it was very specific to Planoly. It was around how are you aligning your business strategy around, similar actually to some of the questions you've been asking me. And then how does my specific role fit into making that a reality? And I think that the reason I liked it was just, it was so grounded in her understanding, is this the role for me? And it also was like testing whether we had a business strategy and how well connected that was to the day-to-day. So I think it obviously depends on the company, but it doesn't take, like, I don't think she spent hours researching.
Yeah.
She Googled Planoly and for our social media, and it was.
I mean, I feel, when people, I mean, this is so random, but like when people ask, oh, what is the time off? Or like, what is the, like questions that it's already like, okay, you're coming in here and you're already preparing for your first vacation. It's just like, how does that, do you have any other bad questions that you should tell people, like, never ask this question in a job interview?
Well, I think like when I'm asking someone, what questions do you have for me? I think I do get kind of the ick around questions that are really, really tactical, because we have an HR team, like you can ask them those questions. Like this is your time to like really bring it and like create a good discussion that shows that you can like pull insights out of a conversation. And so it doesn't have to be anything like, yeah. So I agree. I don't like those questions. Not even from I do think like understanding the impact to your personal life is important, but like that's not what you should be using like FaceTime. Especially like I'm like usually the last interview in the interview, and I don't understand why someone would use that precious time to ask about time off.
So in case you said that you're currently hiring for a role, if somebody wants to get a job at Planoly, where should they usually look? Is it like LinkedIn, or you have any other websites?
We do post our jobs on LinkedIn. We're actually looking for, I think, a really interesting role right now. We're looking for a brand evangelist, somebody who can kind of travel around and go to shows and really like engage with the creator community and build that community a little bit more. So
that is an interesting role.
If anyone is listening, LinkedIn.
Okay, yeah, good tip.
Yeah, we post our jobs on LinkedIn.
Do you feel like creators should use LinkedIn as much as some other, professionals? Because ever since I was like 18, I was like, LinkedIn is so cool. Like I want to seem so professional, so I want to have a LinkedIn. But I feel like a lot of creators kind of ignore it because there's so many other platforms, obviously. But how important is for creators to be on LinkedIn?
That's a great question. I mean, I know that LinkedIn is working on expanding tools to support creators in engaging in conversations. I think for me, LinkedIn is a very different tool. It's a tool where you can build community, you can share tips and tricks, and sure, other social media is for that as well. But I do think creators should be on LinkedIn. I think there's a great opportunity to engage around topics. I think there's like the groups and the discussions and the articles and sharing your insights can be really valuable. And I think it's also like you said, it's hard to find people to support your business. Like that's the thing that I use LinkedIn for the most. It's a great way to stay connected with the people that have really impressed you. And whether they're a creator or a social media manager or somebody or customer success person that like really wowed you, it's a great way to kind of stay connected and tap into, hey, I need somebody to help me with this.
I want to talk a little bit about your day-to-day life and like how does that look like? Do you have a morning routine? Do you have like meetings back to back? Do you have like only this day is my meeting day, Tuesday is my team building day, Wednesdays? Like how do you organize your time?
That's a great question. I really try to time block. So I do have a lot of meetings. I try to every couple of months delete the ones that I don't need. I do try to consolidate them so that I have a day or two that is much less meeting heavy so that I can work on larger projects and spend some time just like thinking. I start my day with waking up my daughter. My wife and I do that together every morning, and it's...
What time is that usually?
7:30. So she lets us sleep in a little bit.
So yeah, she's 2 years old now. So like the crazy waking up at night kind of that's over.
Yes, hopefully, knock on wood.
Hopefully.
I know it can come back.
So you wake up around 7:30 with your daughter and your wife, and then what do you guys do? You're based in Austin, so do you have a little morning routine together?
Yeah, we let the dog out, we feed the dog together, we have our coffee, get Camden ready for breakfast and the handoff to her nanny, and then I try to avoid having meetings first thing in the morning. I think that's a really good time to kind of really just revisit my priorities, understand kind of what are the things that I really want to get done. The one thing that I've kind of kept from my marketing consulting days was they had this like really strict, I'm not as strict with it, but template for like today is over when. And I find that is really helpful to kind of just break out what I need to be focused on and put like, these are the
Wait, say it again. It's today is over when, meaning like today is over when we finish XYZ task. Is that it?
Yeah,
okay,
so
interesting. I never heard of that.
Over when, this week is over when. And so
okay,
you're putting things in kind of categories of like, what are the larger things that are going to take me a lot longer to do? What are the things that I want to make sure that I get to today? And what part of the larger projects do I want to get done? It's not a perfect system, and I am not perfect at executing it, but it's helpful to keep myself organized. I usually write my today task list on paper.
I was about to say, I feel like I mean, even right now, as we're talking, I have my little notebook and my pen, and I'm like just writing down notes for things that I want to still ask you. Even though I use all of my apps and all of my notes, and I still kind of like writing it down and like checking it off, it like feels really like accomplished. So do you separate your days? Maybe like Monday is strategy, or I mean, whatever it is, like strategy or this, and then meetings, like, or you kind of, I had this time when I was trying to do like, okay, Monday's going to be not Monday, but let's say Thursday is my content creation day. Friday is editing this, but I can't do it. I feel like I tried because I'm listening to a lot of, interviews with founders and CEOs, and like some people say that it's easier to kind of I can't even pronounce this word, compartmentalize. It's like it's easier for you to, do all your content in one day, but my brain just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, that's why I time block. I've never been good at like this day is for that, because I also think like one of the things I've been trying to do as I've gotten older is like really listening to my body and trying to like figure out. There are some days when I wake up and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do like big thinking today. I need to like crunch through all of these like kind of lingering small tasks that are like important but non-urgent. And I think it's important to just like, when you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, let yourself do that. It is like time blocking helps. Like if I have a time block where I need to work on something that's a bigger strategy project or a deep dive into something, like I won't just skip over it. I'll move it so that I make sure that I don't lose track of that. But yeah, I've never been great at this day is for that.
This day is that. Can you share, when it comes to time blocks, obviously everything is different, but do you usually do like 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours? Like obviously it depends on the project, but on your, let's say, just going through emails or like some everyday things.
If it's a quick thing, like a checking email, I'll block off 30 minutes. But if it's something where I need to like really dig in and understand, like do some research and come up with a plan, I usually do an hour and a half. Gives me time to like get distracted for a few minutes, like when a fire pops up on Slack, but actually still get to the task at hand.
You mentioned distractions. I feel like they're everywhere. And obviously we both work in the social media space, and it's almost like you have to be online all the time to see what's going on and what changes are happening, and like just to keep up with the trends. But at the same time, they're taking away from what you should be doing, and that is building whatever you're building at this moment. So do you have any tips to like how do you handle distractions, or like do you put it, my phone is always in don't disturb, even though I still like grab it every 5 minutes, but like it is on don't disturb. Do you have any tips to like kind of eliminate the noise?
Yeah, my phone has been on like silent for I think 15 years at this point.
I don't even know what my ringer sound is, honestly.
Definitely not. It is probably, honestly, I still have like a ring back tone.
The default one.
So I do think that that's important. The other thing, like I'm big on goals. I like to set and personal goals for myself, books to read, pages to read, miles to run. Having something that I'm trying to like accomplish really motivates me. And so I will sometimes set up little rewards for myself, like, okay, you can look at social media and after you do this task or after you spend an hour on this thing. It's a way that I've like since college kind of gamed my own
I love that.
procrastination tendency. So I think that finding ways to make it fun. And I also think it's about giving yourself permission. Like, yeah, looking at social media is super important. You need to make time for that, but time block it and don't feel guilty when you're doing it, because then you're not actually getting the strategy and the ideation that you should be getting from it.
You mentioned you like to read a lot of books. What are your favorites right now? What kind of books do you read? Do you read more like, fiction, or is it, I love self-development and business building things, but sometimes when I'm reading them, it's like, okay, I'm studying constantly. I feel like sometimes I have to find something that's kind of going to relax my brain. What are you currently reading, and what are your favorite types of books?
The main book I'm reading, I usually am reading 5 books.
Okay, love that.
Because you're always in a different mood.
Totally, yeah.
But the main book I'm reading right now is The Future by Naomi Alderman.
I'm going to put them all in the show notes so people can check it out.
It is fascinating. It's a kind of dystopian take on the end of the world driven by social media. So I kind of like books like that where they're fiction, but they make you think about the things that impact you day to day. I do love business books. Some Amp It Up by Frank Slootman is the one I read recently that like loved. Anything by Adam Grant. But I also am a sucker for like just a cheesy romance.
I didn't read It Ends With Us. I know it's currently in the movies and everybody's like talking about it, and some people, I don't know, like I don't know much about it. I was supposed to go to the movies the other day to watch it because everybody was like raving about it, and then I didn't realize that tickets are going to be sold out, and I just like walked in. I'm like, oh, here I am in the movies, and they're like, there's no seats available. Like people book this 2 weeks in advance. But I'm like, okay, oopsie. Yeah, but yeah, romance is. Do you watch TV, or is it like TV not that much?
No, I do. I think like sometimes it's fun to just put something like random on while I'm scrolling through, catching up on the social media trends.
I love that. I think Netflix should have a section that's like while you scroll, like things in the background while you scroll, because I always like to have something in the background while I'm scrolling. What is your favorite type of scrolling content in the back?
Well, so my friends and coworkers even, the joke is that I will watch literally anything if it has a lesbian storyline. So I watch some pretty random things.
Yeah.
Or I watch things in the hope that a lesbian storyline will develop and have my dream stash.
Pretty Little, what are they called? Pretty Little Liars?
Pretty Little Liars.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't watched the new versions, but I did watch the OG series. That was quite a journey.
Do you like to, I mean, we're talking about TV shows right now. Do you like to binge, or so like if you see I like Apple TV has amazing shows.
Yes.
And I like that sometimes they just release all 6-7 episodes at once, and then I can decide if I'm going to binge, because sometimes when it's like week after week, like the anticipation is killing me.
Yeah, it is. Like I reflect often on how like we used to just always have to do that.
Yeah, we always had to wait.
I'm definitely lean more in the binging, but I think since COVID and since the pandemic, my like ability to like handle heavy things has reduced. So I can watch like have 15 Friends episodes in a row.
Like, I love Friends.
But for some of the like Apple TV, like really good, like The Morning Show, I sometimes like only watch like one or two of those at a time.
I just have to share a few shows that I watched recently that were phenomenal. There was this show called Drops of God. It's on Apple TV. It's a show. It's in English. I've been telling everybody about the show because it just like blew my mind that it was so well done. It's in English, Japanese, and French. And it's about this like wine connoisseur that is sick and he's about to pass away, and then he like has to leave his empire to someone, and he has this like estranged daughter, and then there's this guy who's like his protege, like somebody who he taught everything about wine, and them two are competing, and they're about like, it's just such a good show. I don't know, I'm like telling everybody about it, and obviously Presumed Innocent is a great show. Last night I finished this show Perfect Couple. I wasn't that impressed. I expected much more. Did you watch that one?
I did watch it. I thought it was like good.
It was good. It was like, it's nice to watch.
Yeah,
but I expected a bit more drama. I don't know.
Yeah, I did it like I was waiting for there to be like one more twist. Like it didn't feel like, quite twisty enough. Like Benji got away too easy.
Yeah. Didn't feel twisty enough. I love that.
If you love Apple TV, my favorite Apple TV show is Dickinson.
Okay, haven't heard of that. No, I'll write that down.
It's about Emily Dickinson, the poet, and it's
okay.
Like kind of like a fun modern interpretation. There is a lesbian storyline.
I will definitely watch it.
But it really kind of like, obviously everyone knows about Emily Dickinson, but it kind of it takes her actual poems and kind of like puts them into like a really interesting context. Which
okay, love that. I just finished Perfect Couple, so I'm like, I need a new show this weekend.
For All Mankind, also on Apple TV.
Okay, I love Apple TV. I feel like they do a great job with like their production. Yeah, okay, we'll talk about, we're getting back to business now. Let's talk about entrepreneurs, and if somebody wants to start a business, and like what advice do you have for entrepreneurs?
I think going back to what I said earlier, like keep trying. I think there's this like, we're so used to like instant gratification. You want to watch the next episode, you can't.
Yeah, right away.
And so I think we've lost as a society a little bit of our grit in terms of like pushing through the hard things. So I think that's really important. I also think, like, to your point earlier, like hire people that inspire you and excite you and make you better. Like the team you have around you is super important. One of the reasons that I came to Planoly was because Teresa Day, our CEO, asked me to. And like, I absolutely love working with her.
Let's go back to how did they find you? You said that you worked as a marketing. I'm sorry, what would you say? Marketing before?
I was the CEO of Loomly and Sendable prior to Loomly, their social media management tools also. So really familiar with the like social media integrations, that kind of like technical side. But what brought me to Planoly was this like creator market and getting to kind of market to a new audience, really kind of building on the brand that Planoly has had for so long, to like think about how do we innovate in that space. So Loomly, Ascendable, we're all kind of owned by the same private equity company. And so we had kind of a discussion about like what was going to happen next. And I was kind of working with a COO of sorts on the Loomly side, and she wanted to step into the CEO role. And then Teresa has been at Planoly for a really long time, is like brilliant, and we've been friends and kind of collaborated for a really long time. And we decided it would be fun to just actually work together, see what we could do.
I love that. So just a few more questions about entrepreneurs. What if they're like just totally starting out and they're scrappy? Maybe they can't hire anyone, they don't have any budgets, but like they still need help. Or like, we all know like we gotta be consistent and keep pushing forward. But sometimes, people obviously want to give up, but they don't see anything in, they don't see anything in front of them. Do you have any like specific things or something that can just help them kind of like rewire their brain?
Yeah, I mean, I think like if you find, so my dad in his retirement, he started drawing birds in shoes. And it's become a little bit of a business for him, like kind of by accident. But like the reason why it did that was because he was consistent. He like had something that he wanted to do and bring to the world. He wanted to share some whimsy during COVID, and he did it every couple of days. He posted a bird in shoes, and over time it really like built into something. And I think that like, it's putting in the time, it's finding that consistency. We did a survey earlier this year, and consistency doesn't mean like 5 posts a day. It means like 1 to 2 a week, and just like really sticking with that schedule. And the other thing I think that's super exciting now is that you can build a thriving business with 2,000 followers, whereas you used to have millions.
Yeah.
And so it's really just like focusing, iterating, finding that niche. And then I think it's also like finding like inexpensive tools and things that will make
AI is really helpful if you know how to use it properly.
Yeah, AI is helpful. Like, not to like give a shout out to our tools, but like Planoly Instant Feed are like inexpensive tools that can like create the foundation for something to make whatever part of your business you don't like a little bit easier. I think it's like identify the things that really give you energy that you want to spend your time on, and then whether it's hiring it out to a tool or a person, like find the support you need with the things that you don't like to do. I hate booking travel, but like we're operating like a startup. I don't have an assistant. So my wife does it because she wants to book travel.
I hate booking travel too. I'm always paranoid that I'm going to book something incorrectly. It happened to me a few times and I'm like, I'm never doing this again.
And there are tools we can do that too, I'm sure.
So back to creators and Planoly. What is the best, like if somebody's a new creator or maybe they're on the seasoned creator and they just want to start with Planoly. I know you have a bunch of different plans. I know it's all like dependent on whatever you currently need, but what would you say like for somebody who wants to start Planoly, but maybe they're not sure which way to go?
I think if you have an idea and you have something that you want to sell, I would start with SnipFeed. There are ways to integrate with a Planoly to plan and push content to your social through that. And with Planoly, just start with the starter plan. It takes
test it out
10 minutes to link a couple of social accounts, get some posts on your calendar. I think like the most value that someone can get out of Planoly is like when you first create your account, it's blank. Once you have it filled in and you have some things in there, like it's a game changer. And so just like maybe it's not block a whole day like you and I don't like to do, but you can block a couple of hours in a week and fill up your calendar, use our AI caption writer, and then you can kind of let that piece flow while you focus on, again, what it is that makes you super excited every morning.
I love that it's on my phone and also on my desktop, because I sometimes, when I'm setting up my feed, I'm currently very into my feed being really aesthetic. At some point, I was like, oh, I just want it to like kind of look okay, but now I want to really be cohesive. And then when I'm like downloading photos from Pinterest and I'm like putting them, it's like always easier to do it for me on my desktop. So I'm so happy that it's like seamlessly integrated and you can write a little notes. And like, I'm such a huge fan of the platform. And that's why I honestly wanted to have you on to just like kind of learn about it and like see, you know, the person behind and all that. I have one final question for you that I ask all of my guests. And that is, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Ooh, that is such a good one. I think the thing that took me longer to figure out is that it's okay to be myself. I think obviously with coming out, that's a big part of it. But even just like finding my feet as a leader, and like it's so, as an entrepreneur, as a person in business, I would tell myself to let go of the shoulds and just work on understanding, which is, I mean, I think a constant battle. I don't know about you, but therapy helps a lot.
Yeah, I love therapy. Help me to rewire my self-worth and all of that.
Yeah, I think it's just like being okay with who I am and not trying to like fit into someone else's box of like what is okay or good. And I think that's really like, I don't know who said it, either my mom or someone famous, but like everybody has their own unique gift, and if we're trying to like be someone else, we're not actually sharing that with the world. And
I love that.
I think it's just so important, and I would have encouraged myself to just let go of the shoulds.
This is totally full circle now, because in the beginning we started talking about CEOs and the way that they were like pictured in a way, and now we're like tying it with, I love it. This was such a great episode. I'm so happy we got to connect. I'm also happy we got to share some of our favorite TV shows and the best ways to decompress. But if you can just share, where can people find Planoly, or how can they connect? Give me all the links.
Yeah, the best place to find us is at Planoly on Instagram. We're also on TikTok and all of the other things. The best place to find me is on LinkedIn /Katelyn Sorensen, I think. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Katelyn. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and I'll see you next week.
Bougie Bestie, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to subscribe to my podcast so you never miss out. I release new episodes every Friday. If you love Bougie Best Friend, please leave a 5-star rating and a review. Your support means the world, and it helps the show grow. You can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Koko Beauty, and you can find Bougie Best Friend on Apple, Spotify, and all other major podcasting platforms. Love you. Bye.